Okay, guys, very welcome back to the show. I've got a very, very special guest on the show in my continuation of working with people from Pavement. They have great bands on Pavement. Check them out. It's Jeremy from the band Core. Jeremy, how are you, man?
I'm awesome. How you doing, Maurice?
Good to connect finally. I was just saying off camera there, we had a little bit of a date fuck up, and I'm going to take the blame on that one.
It's a little juggling, but it happens.
Yeah. Look, man, for people that might not know yourself and your band, do you want to kind of give me just a brief history about, obviously, music has been big in your life since you were a young man to where you are now. So what kind of ignited your passion for music, I suppose, is the first question.
It's kind of been like my thing for as long as I can remember. I grew up like crazy into athletics, like football, basketball, and baseball, and then music. Um, I learned the hard way it was not real feasible for those worlds to coexist. I didn't really necessarily fit in real great in either one of those worlds for a long period of time. Because all my music people didn't understand my jock friends, and my jock friends definitely didn't understand my music friends. Um, so
Yeah.
kind of just through beating my head against a brick wall, I just came to the realization that music was really where my passion was, and kind of always got me through the tough times and was always there for me when I needed it. And over time, I just, as I developed into songwriting and stuff like that, it kind of became like my imaginary friend that I could just always talk to. So I've just never let go of that.
Yeah. Do you remember your first gig?
I do. It was a Christmas party for a McDonald's corporate Christmas event. And
That's
it was fucking horrific. We were awful.
that's something that I've never heard when I've asked that question. Was this kind of a cover kind of gig kind of deal?
It was about half covers, half really shitty originals. Our bass player and drummer in the band worked at McDonald's and somehow coerced their boss into letting us play at this big corporate event at a Holiday Inn hotel downtown. So it was pretty like highfalutin for them, and for us it was our first gig. They didn't know that until about 30 seconds into the first song. It was probably pretty apparent.
Oh, it didn't go down well, no?
No, it was rough.
Yeah, yeah, that's gas. I've never heard that answer, but you can always say you worked for one of the biggest companies in the world. Yeah,
There's that, right?
yeah. We'll touch on Core now. Obviously, like this is your baby and your project. We discussed off camera there. So, do you want to tell people that aren't familiar with your band how it all began and kind of to where you are now today and how it's evolved?
Sure. The band evolved, or basically was started without the formation of a band. 20 years ago, this October, so a month and a half ago, I had a handful of songs that I thought were really strong originals, and was having a really hard time just finding people in the geographic area where I live here in South Dakota in the States that either were interested in that kind of music or could play that kind of music. So I had 5 songs that I demoed and just kind of formed a band after I did that. Various members throughout the Midwest until we had a pretty solid lineup that we went out and gigged with. And then just over
Yeah,
time, members have come, members have left. But I mean, I've always kept going forward with it and write and record. Um, Put out 5 records in that time, and just recently released a radio edit of a song with Pavement, our song "Daydream Junkie," and
yeah.
that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of the last 20 years of how it started to where we are now.
Yeah, we're going to take a clip actually of that song in a moment, but I noticed when I was watching that it's just straight in your face. Like there's no, it's just straight into it. Is that the radio? Is the radio edit much different from the original?
No, it's not. It's structurally it's exactly the same. What happened is once we got involved with Pavement, we were kind of under the impression that we're going to be releasing new music, which we intend to do very soon, early 24. But um, Tim, the head of A&R and the guy that we work with the most, really liked that song and felt very strongly about that, but was of the opinion that we should maybe try to get it as close to 3 minutes as it was humanly possible. Um,
Yeah,
but try to get to the chorus a little bit quicker because it's such a big soaring chorus. And I try to do that in all the songs, but I think we only ended up shaving off like 23 or 24 seconds off of it to get it to that 3 minute mark. And I wasn't even sure if I could do it. I produced the record here in my home studio, so I had all the tracks. So it was just a matter of me going in and figuring out where I could cut things and see if I could put it back together and it would flow. So what we ended up doing was, there's a musical breakdown section after that second chorus where the vocal kind of carries out for a couple bars. I just went in and chopped all that stuff out, brought the rest of the song in very ergonomically, like you would, like if you're cutting a puzzle, and crossed our fingers and sent it off to the label, hoping that they were going to like it. And Tim got back to me and was like, "This song is fucking awesome." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we did it." So, but we still hadn't decided at that point if that's what we were going to do. So we talked about it for like, I think a day or day and a half. And we're just kind of the opinion, if they feel this strongly about this song and we were able to pull this off, then we need to go with that. So that's how that came to be.
Radio play is huge over in the States. Like, it's not really a thing here where I'm from in Ireland. Obviously, we're a very small country. But how important is it to be able to get your music on the radio over there? And how popular is rock radio over there?
I think the majority of the bands that are really hitting right now are getting radio airplay, like on satellite radio, like Sirius XM. Stuff like that. Like Weird, a band that I think fits really well into the Octane format, which is something that we're striving for constantly. But in terms of like local radio stuff like that, my understanding of it, a lot of it's kind of like corporate owned, conglomerate owned. So a lot of those playlists are kind of like dictated to the radio station. There's not a lot of opportunity just on like your traditional brick and mortar radio stations for new bands to get heard. And in fact, like speaking for myself personally and the guys in our band, like I don't remember the last time I've listened to music that wasn't on satellite radio.
Yeah. Would that affect your writing process going forward? Because I watched a couple of interviews recently with a band I've seen multiple times over here, Fozzy, fronted by Chris Jericho, the wrestler. And him and his guitarist Rich were saying how important it is just to have hooks, and that's what will get you on the radio. Is that something that you would be thinking about, maybe putting out a new record next year, or you just want to do it kind of organically, not think about that and just see what happens?
No, it's something I'm very deliberate about always. And that's why it was kind of a little bit caught me off guard when they were like, "We need to trim this down." I'm like, "It's like less than 3.5 minutes now. What do you want me to trim?" But I guess the other thing that we trimmed out too was probably, I think there was like 8 seconds of intro music, just so we could get into it quicker, but it worked. But yeah, I mean, that's something I'm always aware of. I'm pretty formulaic about how I approach a song. I try to get to that chorus pretty quick, but
yeah,
I mean, and I think there's a little bit of variance you can get away with depending on the style of music you play. Like if you're a pop artist, you better have that chorus hitting like in less than 30 seconds. But that's something I'm very deliberate about. And ironically, the new stuff that I'm tracking right now is already kind of like pre-baked into that notion. Like, all right, maybe we're going to open with the chorus on this song. Maybe there's not going to be an intro. Maybe the chorus is going to hit you in the face, and then we go into a verse and work our way back to it. Because if you've got somebody at radio that's like checking, all right, where's the hook? How long is this song? Like you need to be aware of that, because all the competition is trying to get heard just like us. They're playing by the same rules. So, but I mean, I won't let it get to the point where it dictates 100% what I do artistically. That will never happen.
Yeah, but it's just something you kind of keep in the back of your mind. Like, you've been traveling with this band, we'll say, for 20 years. How much has changed over those 20 years in the industry? We kind of touched on it off camera, but as like an artist like yourself, how difficult is it now in the industry, considering the way it's gone?
I think it's harder now than it ever was to stand out, because the internet's kind of leveled the playing field for everybody. But with that said, if you educate yourself on how to market your band and you have music that you know is relatable to people, it really does give you an opportunity to reach literally anybody. I mean, you're in Ireland. Like, this wasn't possible when I started this band. So, and we've gotten a lot of good reaction from places that we've never played or toured before. So it's changed a lot, but the one thing that's been constant is, I think, from when we started to where we are now, is this business is a grind, and it needs to be approached as a business. Otherwise, you're just going to be disappointed all the time, because you get told no so many times. And and that's part of it as well. But it's having the knowledge and the belief in yourself, and obviously the support of a fan base that keeps you relevant is why you don't quit in those tough times. At least for us, that's what it's been.
Yeah. Is there anywhere on your bucket list that you would love to play, like any country or anywhere specific or a venue that you say, I got to play there someday before?
Oh, there's so many. But one thing that will always get in the way to some degree is that I hate flying. I'm scared to death. I do it.
So do I.
I do
Whiskey,
it quite
man.
a bit.
Whiskey. Whiskey's your friend.
Oh, I know. I love whiskey. But yeah, I mean, this last run we did in November in Florida, like we flew in, I flew in for that, and then flew back. But it's much preferred to being in a vehicle for 21 hours or 24 hours. But the whole process, I just don't like. But I mean, obviously, I would love to play where you are. I mean, I would love to play Europe. I would love to play Canada. I mean, like you name a place that would be receptive to this kind of music. And it seems like Europe, Japan, yeah, like this kind of music goes over really, really well there. Because you guys have like the festival scene and things like that we would love to be a part of. And through the years, we've had some opportunities to go do some of those shows, and it always gets down to the risk reward. Is it worth the cost to go tour over there? And kind of getting back a little bit to the previous question about how things have changed. One thing that I've noticed just in the last couple of years is the way bands tour. Like I've got this beautiful Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier tube amp that I haven't brought on stage in a year and a half. Everybody's using modelers now. Because one, the technology is so realistic. Like I can't even believe the tone I dial on that thing. No, I can tell the difference between that and my amp, but 99 out of 100 people can't. And I can literally just show up to a gig with my case and my floorboard and my guitar versus having to bring in amps and cabinets and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot to it, but I mean, that's one thing that's definitely changed and made things easier for us, at least.
I think I noticed that in about 2 years ago, I went to a gig. It was the same band I mentioned earlier, Fozzy, and I turned to my friend Kevin. He's got a recording studio, big into music. I said, "Where's all the fucking amps?" And he was explaining that to me, and now I've noticed that every band I've seen, it's the same. Crazy.
It is, and it's a little nerve-wracking for me too, because I don't trust the technology. I know how awesome it is, but you're basically playing with a computer. I mean, I told you off air here before we started this, like my laptop forced a Windows update on me 20 minutes before I was supposed to be on this call with you. So I'm doing it on my phone. Like being on a stage with a room full of people and having something like that fuck up there's no coming back. So you got to have a contingency plan. And I do, but that's actually how I got to even allow myself to try it. Was we were playing a show and the support band in front of us either blew a fuse or something, but it blew a circuit, but it blew up the fuse on my amp, and we didn't know that's what it was. I thought they fried my whole like $5,000 guitar rig. I was pissed, but I just happened to have my Helix modeler that I had never brought into a show before, was just sitting right there, and the front of house guy's like, "Does that thing work?" I'm like, "I don't know how to work it, but yeah." So we dialed up a tone, a couple clean channel tones, lead tone real quick, and we did the show like that. It's like, wow, maybe I should pay a little closer attention to this stuff. So, but yeah, it's very rare to see amps on stage, and a lot of the ones that we've done where there are actually cabinets on stage, they're either just there for show, or they're being fed via a power amp into the speakers, but the modeler is still the tone that you're hearing. And that's what's run the whole thing. So that's really revolutionized things for touring bands.
Yeah. You are probably like me then. You don't believe in wireless either. I don't like wireless anything. I don't even like, the people go around with these earbuds with no connections and stuff, and it can't do it.
Yeah, I don't like it, but like the position that we're in now for the tours that we did last month, and then what we got coming up here with SEVENDUST in 10 years. We were direct support for the last tour, and we're the opening act for this one. So the name of the game for us is, after the show, get the fuck off the stage. So I actually have a wireless vocal mic, so that when we're done, we can literally just grab the mic, walk off stage, and be out of everybody's way. But yeah, there's a fine line of like nitpicking that you can have too, about the loss of tone from going wireless versus just having a cable plugged in. I know, like, this was a few years back, but we did a show with Alter Bridge, and Mark Tremonti The guitar player is very much a tone Nazi like me in terms of like just being very specific about every little nuance. And he was the only person on stage that didn't have in-ears, and he was the only person on stage that was like plugged into a cable. So I see it both ways, but for us as a three-piece band, I've kind of had to adapt to going down that wireless road a little bit more than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
And
there's
so
pros and
far,
cons.
so good.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to it, and it's very, very handy if you're doing a massive tour, like say you're doing 20, 30 dates or whatever, and you can just, as you say, pick up your mic and just walk off stage. You know, there is pros to it as well, but I just don't trust technology.
Well, for us now too, these last 2 or 3 runs that we've done, we have in-ear monitor systems now, which has made my life a lot easier, even though I was scared to death to use it, because, I mean, this is back to the technology side of it, but we control our own stage mix through an app, like on a tablet or your phone, so that I can hear only what I need to hear, and we keep the volume relatively low, so it makes our life easy and predictable, because if like we're on a slot where we're not going to get an extended sound check to really get the feel for the room, we can at least know we can hear ourselves on stage. And the front of house guys seem to love it because they don't have to deal with excess noise coming off the stage. They just worry about the drum kit, and then we give them the signals from our modelers, and they do their thing. And it doesn't affect our sound at all. So, I mean, there's that bonus to it too, but I still prefer to just have the monitors ripping my face off and have cables going in tube amps, but it's just not practical in this climate that we're in currently.
Yeah, we are going to take a look at Daydream Junkie, just to look on the YouTube clip here. So I'm just going to take us off the screen for a moment.
Cool.
Now you see what you do to me. My head's are lost in the clouds.
What are the influences there? There is a lot going on, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Influences, you're talking musically or like lyrically or
musically, yeah.
Musically, I guess that song kind of wrote itself. The chord progression, I was like dazed and off, like listening to something on TV and was just playing it. And then like a commercial came where I wasn't paying attention to TV and I'm like, oh, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I just got this melody in my head for the chorus. I didn't have any lyrics or anything yet. But musically, that's kind of how it came together. Arrangement wise, it's a relatively simple chord progression. 4 basic chords and then just reverse them and walking back. The chorus itself came a little bit later in terms of the guitar arrangement, but like I said, I had the melody in my head. So that's musically how it came together. I mean, I think all of the whole catalog of core songs is probably a melting pot of all of our influences, all pretty obviously predominantly driven guitar rock. But I'm a huge fan of like melodic soaring choruses and things like that. And, you know, like a lot of the bands we've gotten to tour with and open for are all our influences and like favorite bands. So I think that stuff will always have its fingerprints on anything I ever write, just because it's influenced how I've learned to write and record. But I feel like I do a really good job of putting my own fingerprints all over it too, so that there's elements of everything. Like I heard, it was a podcast I gave a while ago. A guy said that it was like the what do you say, the bastard child of all of the greats of like rock music, all put into like one band. I'm like, I'll take that. That's a compliment. But I think it's unique enough that you can't put your finger on and say they sound like that band or they sound like that band.
Yeah.
Because I've heard such a broad spectrum, and a lot of the times it's stuff I'd never even considered. Like, because I don't listen to this band, it's a little bit before my time, but like I've heard Queensryche before. I'm like, you don't sound anything like Queensryche, but they're a fucking awesome band. But I think it's because of my dynamics vocally that people don't really know what to put their finger on. I mean, I've heard Coheed Cambria, which we're huge fans of. I've heard Our Lady Peace, which I absolutely adore those guys. I always have, and they're a huge influence on me growing up. But I'm also into bands like Shinedown and stuff like that. I'm also into heavier bands like SEVENDUST and who doesn't love Pantera, and you know, I like the newer bands like what are they called? Beartooth. I guess Beartooth isn't new, but I love Bad Omens. I love that dude's voice. I love that whole band. And I listen to a lot of that stuff, and kind of getting back to like the Octane like format and internet radio, like that's how I discover new music. You know, like bands like Gemini Syndrome and stuff like that. Like I don't think we sound like that band, but they've had a huge influence on how I approach stuff, musically at least. In terms of the tonality of that song, almost every core record prior to this last one has been predominantly guitar and vocal in your face. And I kind of wanted to get away from that a little bit, because I think that the rhythm section, I mean, this is what we spend a lot of time on with our live show. I think that needs to be the cement of the show, because if your drums and your bass are off, it doesn't matter how good you sing. The show is just not going to be as powerful. So I'm lucky enough to have an awesome rhythm section, and Arthur's an amazing stage performer, and so we have that in there, but I wanted that to shine through in a record too. So the verses, the rhythm guitars are kind of pulled down in the mix, and there's that harmonic part that you see in verse 1 of the video that was just kind of there, kind of like just a little bit of decoration, so that when you hit the pre-chorus and the chorus, then the guitars can come in and it kind of elevates the song. But the other reason for that is because of the simplicity of the arrangement. You don't want people to get bored with it. So if I were to sit down a guitar and show you how the whole thing is played, you'd probably like, what's the next part? I'm like, that is the next part. It's just that in the mix, it's the little bit of sorcery where you kind of add more by taking a little bit back. So that's the musical side of that. Lyrically, it's just an emotional mess of a song. It's about a frustrating situation I found myself in. Kind of just wanting things that I probably shouldn't want and that weren't good for me. And just being pissed off that I couldn't have it while I was pissed off. Why do you want this if you know it's not good for you? And then just kind of a calm came over me, like just to realize, like, you know what, you can't control this anyhow. So you just need to let this go. And that's kind of where the lyrical theme came from. I mean, there's specific events in there that are specific to me, but I've always been kind of a fan of kind of leaving it open-ended, and I try to write open-ended because I think people, when they kind of get into a song, they kind of become like part owners of it. And there might be certain lyrics that I meant for my situation, but it might relate to their life in a different way. So I feel like I'm kind of cheating them out of being a part of that aspect of the song if I'm just like, well, I wrote this exactly about this. I mean, and there's certain songs that I write that are more literal than that, but this one is just, there's so much into it, and it's been received well. So I'm glad I put myself through it, but like I said, it kind of wrote itself.
Yeah, nice 50,000 views there on the YouTube video alone, and nothing but positive feedback, a lot of it pertaining to your voice, which people seem to love as well. So that's cool to hear. But we'll kick into songwriting then. What's the process like for you when you're writing songs? Are all three of you guys involved? Kind of?
We haven't been up until now, just because a lot of the stuff was done before they were around. At least our drummer within the last year. But with Arthur and I, with the new stuff, I've been told I throw away more good ideas than most people will probably have. So by the time I bring something to him, it's pretty formulaic and pretty close to a finished product in terms of structure and arrangement. I always bounce stuff off of them. Arthur has some song ideas too that we haven't just not really gotten around to bring to fruition yet. But I think that's going to come into fruition once we get through this last part of December and more seriously into the studio in January and February. But from a structure point, I don't have like a rule book or a set thing. I mean, I've written songs before just completely in my head without an instrument or anything. I just knew here's the chord progression. Like I'd come up with a harmony, or maybe it's a whole verse. Like I'm writing, I'm like, oh, and I just kind of like mind the music in my head, and then I get over to guitar and figure out how to make that work. I've had that happen before. The title track to our last record, Broken Heart Syndrome, I had in 3 separate songs at one point. Each portion, the verse was its own thing, the bridge was its own thing in a different song, and then the intro riff was just a riff that I had. And then just by dumb luck, one day I just kind of put on like, oh, that works really nice. And then the lyrics for that just kind of came together very easily for me. And it just the melody for that verse and that chorus were already written separate from those 3 pieces of music. So it's like I try not to think about it too much, because I look back on the catalog of how many different ways each song came to fruition, and it always works in the end. So I don't want to limit anything or take anything off the table. But so far it's just been kind of however it comes out, it comes out.
Yeah. By the time this video comes out, it'll be probably in around a week from as we're talking now. You guys are getting ready to kick into an amazing tour. So do you want to tell people where you're going to be at, what's the ticket situations like, and who you're playing with, most importantly?
Yeah, we're stoked. So the day after Christmas, we leave for the rest of the year to go out on tour with SEVENDUST and 10 Years in the upper Midwest of the United States. We've got back-to-back nights in Bloomington, Illinois, and I believe the second night is already sold out. I'm pretty sure the first one will as well. Then we go to, is it Moline, Illinois, I believe? The Rust Belt, I think is the name of the venue. And then we end up at the Epic Event Center in Green Bay, Wisconsin on New Year's Eve.
Oh, nice.
So 4 days in a row to be about a week of travel time all in, but yeah, we're stoked. Like, I can't wait.
Is the New Year's Eve show going to be a late show? As in, like, will it carry into midnight?
I don't know. I don't have that information yet. In fact, I don't have a whole lot of information in terms of the times for even show times yet. I would imagine doors typically would probably be like around 6. We're probably on stage around 7 or 7:30. I believe we're getting a 30-minute set, I believe. But yeah, the New Year's Eve one, I don't know. I know that SEVENDUST kind of has a history of doing really cool things like around the holidays. In fact, when I played with them years ago, it was like right around Christmas time, and it was called the Nightmare Before Christmas tour. Yeah, so I would expect something special. I know that's a pretty iconic venue. I keep seeing, like, I think Nonpoint was there the other night, and it's just a beautiful venue. And I think all these venues that we're playing are freaking gorgeous. So yeah, we couldn't be more excited. And in a very strange turn of events in the Midwest, because we're from South Dakota, or we live in South Dakota, we don't have any snow. So nice. And it doesn't look like there's any in the forecast. So that will help the travel time quite a bit.
Well, let's hope it doesn't snow when you're on the road, because you could do without that.
Yes.
Yeah. And then in terms of 2024, next year, you said you're getting into the studio, obviously, to record some material. Is it going to be like an album, an EP? What do you think? And what can the fans expect from you guys for 2024?
I think all the above. I mean, I'm writing and recording right now. I'm about 70% done with 3 songs right now. And I think the initial plan is probably just release one as a single as we're continuing to write and record. At some point in time, an EP or an album will come out, but it seems like anymore. And I mean, the label obviously will have some input, some heavy input on the approach of this too, but it kind of feels like kind of a singles driven market right now, which I'm not
Absolutely
really
agree.
I mean, I'm not really into that because I'm old school. I like to look at the album art. I like to read the liner notes. Like, I want to know who played on what record. I want to know who produced it because I'm a geek, because music's my whole life and this is all that I think about and do. But I understand the currency in being able to put out a new song every 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. The challenge in that is A, having enough in the can to do that, and B, making sure that it doesn't suck. So excuse me.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, like I'm my own worst critic. So if it gets past my smell test, I feel that the fans are going to receive it well.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of the mindset that everybody in the industry is in right now. It's kind of a singles driven market. Leading up to, my drummer was just bitching about this the other day. He's like, so and so, I'm not going to say the artist, like, so and so put out 5 singles and then they release the album and it's 5, it's 9, 10 songs long and 5 of them are already, they're not new. I'm like, well, they were new when you heard them, but that's the way you have to market a record anymore. And getting back to the idea of, as cutthroat as this business is, the internet kind of has leveled that playing field. If you understand marketing at all, like, you can use those singles to your advantage to further your band. I mean, that's the only way we're getting some of these touring opportunities, is just because of how diligent I am with keeping us present on social media and online and just turning out good music.
Yeah, I used to look forward. I'd be kind of old school like you, to getting an album, and obviously there'd be one probably track released from it, and then I'd be listening to the album and I'd be like, oh, I wonder what they're going to release next, or I wonder will they do a music video for this song. So it kind of takes that element out of it as well.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the way that music is released and marketed has changed so much because the record industry is nothing like what it used to be. So it lets an indie band like us have the platform to be presented as a major, like what a former major label artist used to be. But the reality that I always try to strive with the guys is, like, we could spend $10,000 on a music video, but I don't think it's going to get us any further down the road to the next big tour we want on. That's why the video we did for Daydream Junkie was very literally like, let's show us tracking, recording a song in the studio as we would do it, and just put that out, because that's how this record came to be to begin with. So it wasn't glitzy. There wasn't a huge budget. There wasn't a huge film crew and light crew and all that stuff. What you see is what you get with that video. Now, that said, that's not going to be the game plan for every release going forward. But for this one, the way that it came to be, I was like, this is essentially the 3rd or 4th time I've released this record, twice with the backing of the label. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just put this thing out and make it as awesome as we can and see if people respond to it. So we've been fortunate that they have responded to it.
Yeah. And where's the best place for the fans to catch you guys on social media? I will put all the handles underneath this video for your various different platforms. And of course, you got a website as well.
Yeah, everything is at coretunes.com, CORETUNES. All the socials at Coretunes, and then our website is coretunes.com. You've got links to all of our streaming services, all of our socials off the website. Join a mailing list if you want to stay up to date on all the current stuff in the world of core. We've got our merch shop right on that website as well, so that you can order anything worldwide. I've set it up on print on demand now. So, because I learned this the hard way, we had some international sales not too long ago that cost me more money to ship the shit than what we sold. So I had to put my thinking cap on there. But yeah, we've got a print on demand merch store that has specific items you can only get on the website there, as well as some of the physical product that doesn't sell when we're on tour. We'll list on there as well. But it's kind of set up on autopilot now to where I can just set it and forget it. And when people buy stuff, the warehouse manufactures it, they ship it out, and the money just goes into my bank account. So that way I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, that's another plus on technology there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, man, it was an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today. And like, I'd like to have you back on the podcast maybe next year when you guys are about to release something. I'd love to catch up and chat again.
Anytime. I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's a real pleasure, man.
Take care.